Who's your commander?
Good luck.
Equip.
Move to combat. Resolves.
Right.
Now, before you attack
Does
me,
anyone have an answer?
well played.
Good game.
Hello everyone, my name is DJ, this is the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel, and I want to take a look at Kaldheim once more. I already did a top 8 list, but previews weren't done yet. But honestly, I covered a lot of good stuff in that video, so I'm going to let that one speak for itself. Right now, I want to talk about underrepresented cards. That's right, the overlooked cards already in this set. They need to be in way more decks, and I want to point them out to you right now before the set's even released in paper. All right, everyone, we are here on edhrec.com, and this can point out some of the most popular cards from Kaldheim. And we're not going to focus on the popular cards because they're going to show up in your searches. You're going to find them here. Instead, we're going to go towards the bottom of the list to find some underrepresented new cards from the new set. So these are rows of 5. So 5, 10, 15, 20, not the top 20, not the top 25, not the top 30 or 35. We're going to start right here with Mystic Reflection. Mystic Reflection is 1 in a blue for an instant. Choose target non-legendary creature. The next time one or more creatures or planeswalkers enter the battlefield this turn, they enter as copies of the chosen creature. This also has Foretell for a blue. That means you can lay it away for 2 generic mana, and at a later turn, you can play it for just 1 blue. And that's good because Mystic Reflection is a very reactive card. In fact, you need to have something on the stack to make it work. If you're going big and doing a combo yourself, then you need to be able to play a relevant creature and then play Mystic Reflection. Let me explain. The thing that people are talking about is Avenger of Zendikar because it is very EDH battleship over the top. Let's pretend that we have 8 mana on the battlefield. We tap 7 and play Avenger of Zendikar. Then Avenger of Zendikar enters the battlefield and says, hey, you should create 8 plant creature tokens. Before we do that, we're going to go back and cast our Mystic Reflection. And then when those 8 plants enter the battlefield, they'll be like, nope, we are not plants. We are Avengers of Zendikar, because that's what we've targeted with Mystic Reflection. 8 Avengers of Zendikar come in, and they each create 8 more 0/1 plants, making for 64 0/1 plants and 9 total Avengers of Zendikar on the battlefield. Just a single land will make your plants 9/10s, and you will have the game taken over with over-the-top efficiency. Now that is very much Magical Christmas Land. You need 2 specific cards and 8 mana. And honestly, if you have 2 specific cards and 8 mana, you might just be able to win the game. Right away too. Like a Craterhoof Behemoth or an unanswered Avenger of Zendikar is pretty good. So is this just a Magical Christmas Land card? Well, no. You don't need Avenger of Zendikar. You can make it a little bit more efficient with Deep Forest Hermit. For just 6 mana instead of 8 and a land drop, you can create a bunch of squirrels. And they're actually 5/5, 6/6 squirrels, because you'll have 5 Deep Forest Hermits on the battlefield at the end of all of this. And honestly, you can find token creators that are efficient and great in every single color. What kind of decks would this go well in? Well, I think a Brutaclad deck would love this. They really enjoy making tokens. They like having big relevant creatures enter the battlefield and having your tokens transform into them. I think that Mystic Reflection would be great in that. I personally am slotting it straight into my Xyrus the Writhing Storm deck. It makes a ton of snakes. And you know what? I'd kind of like to turn my snakes into Coiling Oracles or Elvish Visionaries or something like that. I think that that sounds like a really cool way to leverage my snakes. And so I'm excited about this. Of course, Mystic Reflection can also just be a counterspell. I know it's a little bit narrow, it only hits creatures and planeswalkers, but all of your opponents in EDH have a creature they care about a lot, sitting right there in the command zone. Mystic Reflection is also really cheap at 1 blue mana after it's foretold, so it's easy to hold up. There's the downside that you need a non-legendary creature in order to target and transform, so it does mean that this is a little bit less reliable than a classic counterspell. But there's another upside too. A lot of times a commander would rather be in the command zone or even in the graveyard than stuck on the battlefield copying an Elvish Mystic. So Mystic Reflection could have that benefit to it as well. There's also the even more janky way of playing this. I know you thought Avenger of Zendikar was the janky way, but let me introduce you to Leveler. If you happen to have a Leveler on the battlefield, you can transform your next opponent's creature into a Leveler and they remove their library from the game and lose. This is not the only card that does this. There are a few cards that have such horrible downsides that if your opponents ever get the creature, they lose the game. So they must live in fear of Mystic Reflection. And of course, you must live in fear because how did you get this Leveler out? Did you play it into your own Torpor Orb? And then somehow get rid of your Torpor Orb for your opponents? There's a lot of hoops. So we're really talking about Magical Christmas Land. Some cards that definitely do some damage when you play them are the Wormfang cycle, which you might never have seen before. Wormfang Behemoth comes into play and you remove all cards from your hand from the game. So if you copy Mystic Reflection for someone else, then they just get rid of their hand. It'd be great. And by the way, if you're getting rid of your hand, Mystic Reflection can sit in the Foretell Zone. So it's exiled, so you don't have to... These are bad. People talk about Wormfang Manta, this 7-mana 6/1 that make your opponent skip their turn, which is funny. These are all just funny. But I do want you to focus on Mystic Reflection as a good card. It's narrow, and it can be very over the top in terms of value, you know? But sometimes it'll just be a counterspell for a relevant creature that your opponents are playing, and that is good enough. And also, every so often, it'll do something insane, and that's what Commander's all about, creating those stories. So I am a huge fan of this card, and I think it's underplayed already. Less than 10 slots below Mystic Reflection is Durger Necromancer. Just an amazing card that hates, uses snow, and gives you tons of value. Durger Necromancer is 3 and a black for a 4/4 snowy zombie cleric. If a non-token creature an opponent controls would die, exile that card with an ice counter on it. You may cast spells among cards in exile your opponents own with ice counters on them, and you may spend mana from snow sources as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. If you have enough snow basics, and you don't need a lot of it, you can basically cast all of these as though your lands produced any color, almost like this Thief of Sanity. Normally it's and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast a spell. That's the normal thing. So you definitely need to jump through the hoop of having some snowy lands. But it actually has me thinking a little bit of a Thief of Sanity, and that's just a fun card. Thief of Sanity has to get in, though. That's the thing that stinks. This Necromancer just needs to sit on the battlefield and have things die. It's kind of perfect, in fact. Actually, one thing I want to point out is that disrupting your opponent's graveyard is critical in our game. It really is important. That's why I think that we should be playing more cards like this Durger Necromancer or cards like Kalitas Trader of Get, which at $12 might not be your best way to disrupt the graveyard. So maybe this coming in at just 87 cents right off the bat would be a better way. Kalitas, by the way, creates some 2/2 zombies, has some sacrifice fodder going on there, but overall doesn't really have that big over-the-top late game that the Necromancer might. You know, being able to kill their bomb, their Consecrated Sphinx, and then cast it again is better than a 2/2 zombie. That's much more commandery, you know what I mean? It takes a ton more mana to implement, but is just a bigger effect. Durger Necromancer is fun and good, and graveyard disruption, which is fundamentally what we want in our decks. By the way, a quick shout out, these cards are actually even less popular than you would think because a lot of these legendary creatures around here actually have more decks given to them because they're legendary creatures and in the 99. So these are actually quite popular cards right here. I also want to give a shout out to all of the tribal synergies. You're going to see some giants down here at the bottom because it could be an amazing in a giant deck, but there's not going to be very many of them, including other tribal synergies like this Elvish Warmaster. It's going to go in every elf deck, but there are fewer elf decks out there. Same thing with this Maskwood Nexus. But I want to give another shout out to an uncommon on this list, and that's Replicating Ring. Replicating ring is a quick one. Obviously, there's a lot of other artifacts out there that can ramp you a little bit harder for a little bit less, but the fun value is there. Shout out to Doomscar, but we have a lot of rats in our format. We're going to go deep down to find the next underrepresented card. So we're 5 more down, 10 more down, 15, 20, 25, 30. We are so far down there. We've got uncommons coming up higher than Rise of the Dreadmarn. Let's take a closer look. Rise of the Dreadmarn is 2 and a black for an instant. Create X 2/2 black zombie berserker creature tokens where X is the number of non-token creatures that died this turn. You can foretell this for a single black. That means you can lay it away at a previous turn for 2 generic and just play it for a black when you need to. Again, having this be just a black when you need to deploy it is great, because there's been so many times where I felt like I need to hold up 3 or 4 or 5 mana to protect my board. And that's what this is. This is board protection. If you've committed a lot to the battlefield and then there's a board wipe, people equalize it. Well, you can get right back in the game for a single black mana, creating a ton of zombies. I love that you're creating creatures based on all of them that died. So in multiplayer settings, in big board stalls, you can create truly massive numbers of zombies. One thing that I don't like is that it only counts non-token creatures, because in black, a lot of times I'm going wide with tokens. In fact, going wide with tokens in a lot of different colors. This has me thinking of Caller of the Claw. I've played this a bunch in elf decks. It's also 3 mana, and very often I put a bunch of elves onto the battlefield, and then if someone's gonna board wipe me, at least I can replace my elves with bears. And it's worked pretty well. I also noticed that I've used this in white a lot. White is a really good color for board protection. I think that this pretty clearly compares to some of the indestructible spells, to Fairy's Protection. I have Flawless Maneuver here because it grants them indestructible, but you can pay it for a cheaper cost. You know, you can rebuild, but it'll cost cheaper if it's the right situation. Flawless Maneuver is good. It's up to $10, $9.15. Oh my gosh. It's a good card, and so I think Rise of the Dreadmarn is also going to be a good card. One thing that has me feeling sad about this is that I might have to retire my Thrilling Encore. This is one of the cards that I've desperately wanted to make work, and I haven't found the right situation for it yet. 4 and a black. Put onto the battlefield under your control all creature cards in all graveyards that were put there from the battlefield this turn. So this just brings back all the creatures after a board wipe. It's so cool. But holding up 5 mana is insane. And holding up 1 mana is great. And yes, you could theoretically get back some amazing creatures, but just imagine after a big board wipe having that protection of so many 2/2 zombies. Oh, it combos with Mystic Reflection? So it does. So it does. We should just make them all into Gray Merchants. That's what we should do. And then one of the most underrepresented cards that could be the best is right down here. I did a deck tech on it. It's Kaldheim Doomscourge. Kaldheim Doomscourge is 2 black red for a legendary Demon Berserker. It's a 4/3, and when it enters the battlefield, you goad all of your opponent's creatures. When an attacking creature dies, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. This is Disrupt Decorum on a body with an added drain effect. Goad all creatures you don't control. This is a great card. It's played in tons of commander decks. It's commanding a price above $10, and it is a card that leverages the battlefield in interesting ways. And honestly, it helps you win games you had no reason to win. Kaldheim Doomscourge deserves to be in decks. It's very powerful, and it shouldn't be this overlooked. And if you want more information about Kaldheim, I did an entire video with him as the commander. It is fun and attacking and aristocratic, and I'm building it myself. It's my new Rakdos deck. I'm so excited to be playing it. And down here toward the bottom, just the low of the low, we have King Narfi's Betrayal. Just a fun Dimir card that I think that you'll enjoy in your decks. Let's take a look. King Narfi's Betrayal is 1 blue-black for a Saga. This enchantment starts off by milling each player 4 cards. Then you can exile a creature, planeswalker card from each graveyard. That includes your own. Until end of turn, you may cast spells from among the cards exiled with King Narfi's Betrayal. And you can spend mana as though or mana of any color. So in a multiplayer game, you're going to be able to exile 4 creature cards with this. That's pretty good. And if you can play all 4 of those cards over the next couple turns, then this is way better than a divination. You've essentially drawn 4 cards for 3 mana. That's good. Odds are you're gonna miss on one, or you might not want to cast one, or maybe the mana doesn't work out so well. So even if you cast 3 cards, that would be fine. You know, 2 cards is divination, that's good too. And it gives you access to your opponent's graveyard. That's the fun part, is playing with your opponent's toys. I want to compare this to Mnemonic Betrayal, which is a mythic from Guilds of Ravnica. You can cast anything, but you have to use it right away. You need a lot of mana to pull this off. You play Mnemonic Betrayal, and then what are you going to do? Play a 3-drop from them, and that needs 6 mana total? No, that's not going to work. If we do the same comparison, we play King Narfi's Betrayal on 3, we can cast a 4-drop the next turn and a 5-drop the turn after. So it's much more efficient on mana, even though it's narrow, because the creatures have to be in the graveyard right then, and you have to exile them, and it only hits creatures. If you like this effect, I want to give a shout out to Hedonist Trove. It's not a staple. It's coming in at under 20 cents, so it's a good budget card. But for 7 mana, you get to just wreak havoc on an opponent's graveyard and just cast spells over and over again, gaining value each and every turn. But I like the Betrayal. I think that it's a solid card draw, but most importantly, it's fun because you're stealing your opponent's stuff, and stealing is fun, kids. Thank you so much for joining me for these underrated cards. I want to thank Cool Stuff Inc. They're the sponsor of the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel. Go and check them out at coolstuffinc.com, link in the description. If you put the coupon code JUMBO5, you'll save 5% off your order. I want to thank my patrons. They are lovely and amazing, and this channel would not exist without them. Thank you, patrons. And thank you for watching this video. If you want to support the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel, give this a like and comment. Subscribe. That stuff honestly helps so much. All right, everyone. I hope you like these cards. Tell me down below the underrated cards I might have missed. All right, everyone. Bye-bye.